Well done.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NIHR Innovation Observatory and NICE webinar. What we're going to do today is try and explain to you how we help to facilitate UK market access. As a brief agenda, we're going to have a quick introduction about everyone who's around the table. Then I'm going to speak about what the NIHR Innovation Observatory is and how we work with NICE. Then the NICE cohort are going to speak about topic selection and scoping, and then we're going to take questions. So if you'd like to submit any questions throughout the webinar, if you go to Q&A, you can submit your questions through Q&A. We're going to leave about 15 minutes for questions at the end. I'll come back and I'll select the most appropriate questions and then pass them on to the team. If there are any duplicates, I will type back to you that that's a duplicate question and we are going to answer it. So just as a brief introduction, my name's Stephen Hall and I'm the Knowledge Exchange Associate here at the NIHR Innovation Observatory.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leslie Hall and I'm the Centre Manager at the NIHR Innovation Observatory.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Khan and I'm the Horizon Scanning Analyst here at the Innovation Observatory.
Good morning. My name is Sonia Garcia and I am a Horizon Scanning Analyst at NIHR Innovation Observatory.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Laurie Farrar and I am the Senior Manager for Horizon Scanning, Topic Selection and Scoping at the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, also known as NICE.
Good morning all, my name is Danielle Lees. I am the Project Manager for the Topic Selection team, also at the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence.
Fantastic. So we're going to get started. As I said, I'm going to be the first speaker today. What I'm going to try and do is explain to you what the NIHR Innovation Observatory actually is and how we work with NICE in order to facilitate that UK market access. So we are the NIHR's Horizon Scanning Centre, and Horizon Scanning is essentially all in the name. It's about keeping an eye on the future for any upcoming change. Why do we do that? Well, it's clear that we need to identify, prioritise and filter any new and repurposed medicines that may potentially become available in the EU or the UK. Now, I want to make it clear at this point, what we're talking about today are the new and repurposed medicines. At the moment, that's all we Horizon scan for. However, a lot of you have signed up today, and I know that you're involved in medtech, and our remit will be changing slightly in the coming months so that we will be covering digital diagnostics and devices, and it's important that you understand the processes that we go through. So that's one of the reasons that you're on the call today. What we can do with all the information about these new and repurposed medicines is we can inform decision makers, research planners, healthcare professionals, patients and patients' organisations so that they can make better decisions about healthcare. How we do that is we discover any new and repurposed medicines through systematic searches and through text mining and artificial intelligence. We're currently tracking around 3,500 new or repurposed medicines. And once we've tracked them, we monitor them. We do that through monitoring any developments, but we also do that through close contact and through meeting with companies in order to just get updates about any drugs that they have in development. And at the moment, we converse or meet with approximately 1,200 companies. So that's how we Horizon scan. At our core, we have three main activities. So the information that we pass to NICE is just one of those. And what I'm going to do is just show you a short animation about the activities that we run. So the first activity that we do are called pipeline analysis.
An Innovation Observatory pipeline offers important and immediate intelligence about the future of healthcare technology. Our reports take a fresh approach, highlighting key trends in clinical development to examine both their cause and potential impact on healthcare systems. This approach ensures that our methods are reproducible and addresses clinically relevant questions. They can be used to steer development reports, inform gaps in ongoing research, address unmet needs, and prepare healthcare systems for upcoming waves of technological innovation.
Okay, so our pipeline reports we produce for a variety of people, Department of Health and Social Care, NHS England, any policy research units, other NIHR departments, and we also produce them for NICE as well. Some of these are done ad hoc, some of these are done in terms of priority setting. The second thing that they're involved with is called the Imagine series, which is our public and patient involvement.
The Imagine series is a bespoke and public knowledge exchange program. Devised and coordinated by Voice, a citizen involvement network, and delivered in collaboration with the Innovation Observatory and the National Innovation Center for Aging. The Imagine series empowers patients and carers by identifying key challenges and unmet needs through informed discussion. Then, using horizon scanning and evidence synthesis to determine upcoming health innovations. The Imagine series allows patients and carers an opportunity to influence and shape the innovation and research landscape for their condition.
Okay, so we've previously done Imagine series with carers looking at how we care for people with dementia with Lewy bodies. Currently in development at the moment, we've got a stem cell transplantation Imagine series with Anthony Nolan Trust. We've got polypharmacy, we've got arthritis and osteoporosis as well. And finally, the sort of main thing that everybody's here for today is to discuss how we're the industry's gateway for NICE and how we feed information to NICE so that they can go down their topic selection process.
The National Institute for Health and Care Excellence provide UK healthcare guidance through technology appraisals and highly specialized technologies assessments. A NICE recommendation is crucial for access to the NHS in England and Wales. The Innovation Observatory is the first step in the process. We are the gateway to NICE, informing them about new and repurposed medicines. Early engagement with us enables a smooth transition into the TA or HST process.
Okay, so as the animation said there, we are the first step in the NICE technology appraisal or highly specialized technology assessment process. What we do is we produce filtration forms and briefings for NICE. So we produced 485 last year in 2018. And a NICE recommendation is crucial for access to the NHS in England and Wales. One of the things that we use in order to do that is UK PharmaScan, which is a database providing information on medicines in development. And both Danny and Laurie are going to talk a bit more about UK PharmaScan during their presentation. So how do we actually notify NICE about any new or repurposed medicines? Well, we identify a new or repurposed medicine if it has a new molecular identity, a new indication, including patients or subgroups, a new formulation, a new route of administration, a new mechanism of action, or whether there's a new line of treatment. And if we identify that, if that product is approximately 3 years prior to licensing in the UK, or if we have an indication of that product launching in the UK, it's received a priority status, such as an orphan drug designation or accelerated approval, etc. And if it's in phase 2 pivotal trials or phase 3 clinical trials, we will also flag that. And what that becomes is something that we will notify NICE about. So how does that process actually work? We've got a new or repurposed medicine here. What we'll do is we will contact the company at this point. What we're looking for here is a best estimation of the licensing date possible and any updates about that new or repurposed medicine. Once we've got that and once we've talked to the company, we'll produce a filtration form and we will send that off to NICE. At this stage, NICE will filter it and their decision point 1 will occur and we will receive that NICE decision back. That will either be that there's no briefing required or that a health technology briefing is required. At this stage, we will inform the company and we will set some timescales. The timescales for that briefing will be 20 months before license for new drugs and 17 months before licence for repurposed drugs. What we'll do then is we will write the briefing and we send that again to the company. Any feedback that the company have about that briefing will be incorporated, and then that briefing output will be sent to NICE. So as you can see, what we really require is some company engagement. So there are four points in that process that we contact the company in order to get their feedback or to have a discussion about their products. And so it's really important to know that engaging with the NIHR Innovation Observatory ensures the timely and accurate assessments of new or repurposed medicines. So what I'm going to do now is pass along to Danny, who's going to discuss the NICE topic selection process and scoping.
Thank you, Steve, and good morning, everybody, again, and thank you for joining us this morning. The presentation from Steve has led us on very nicely into what will happen once NICE is notified of the new technology or repurposed drug coming to market. So I wanted to start with the aims of the topic selection function and what we're hoping to do as we progress these technologies through the process. So we want to ensure that NICE addresses topics of importance to all key stakeholders at the right point in the process. We aim to coordinate the selection of topics using a standard process and to ensure that this is consistent throughout the process. We hope to make the topic selection function as rapid as possible and to minimise that period of uncertainty before the guidance is issued and when we get towards the appraisal point. We ensure that all topic selection activities are inclusive, open and transparent and consistently applied. And where possible, we ensure that the companies are updated at each stage through the process. We ensure that there are appropriate governance structures and arrangements in place with all parties relevant to the process, and keeping that communication line open at all steps is key throughout at each selection point. The topic selection team ensures that all stages are well documented with a clear operating procedure in place and to ensure that it's consistent throughout. And of course, we aim to help make the best use of the NHS resources as we progress through the appraisal or HSC process. So there are 4 key steps on that route to appraisal. The first being horizon scanning, which Steve has very helpfully explained what happens at the Innovation Observatory before submission to NICE. When topic selection receives the technology, we will prioritise, eliminate and filter topics for potential TA or HSC assessment. At this stage, we will also sort referral from the Department of Health and Social Care for cancer technologies only at this point in the process. As we progress through to the scoping stage and topics have been identified at the topic selection stage, the draft and final scope is developed, consultation is arranged with all key stakeholders, and referral is sought from the Department of Health and Social Care for the non-cancer technologies. It's following this point that then the assessment for technology appraisal or highly specialised technologies begin. So I'm going to start by talking through the topic selection function. Quite a long road from horizon scanning right up into appraisal, so we want to break that down to ensure that we've got the right information at the right point. So from the topic selection stage in the process, we route to either the technology appraisal programme or the highly specialised technologies programme. And there is a selection of criteria to assess for each technology. So for technology appraisals, key questions that we will be looking to answer is, first one being, is the technology likely to result in a significant health benefit taken across the NHS as a whole if given to all patients for whom it is indicated? The second key question, is the technology likely to result in a significant impact on other health-related government policies? Is the technology likely to have a significant impact on NHS resources if given to all patients? Is there a significant appropriate inappropriate variation in the use of the technology across the country? Is NICE likely to be able to add value by issuing national guidance? For example, without such guidance, they're likely to be significant controversy over the interpretation or significance of the available evidence and the clinical and cost effectiveness? And finally, will NICE add value by producing guidance in this particular area? So there's some key questions there that we try to answer when routing to the technology appraisal process. So the next route from TA is also the highly specialised technologies process, where again there is a selection of criteria and key questions that we're looking at throughout the selection process. The first one being the target patient group for the technology and its licence indication is so small that the treatment will usually be concentrated in very few centres within the NHS. Second criteria is the target patient group is distinct for clinical reasons. The condition is chronic and severely disabling. The technology is expected to be used exclusively in the content of a highly specialised service. The technology is likely to have a very high acquisition cost, and it also has the potential to have lifelong use. And finally, the need for a national commissioning of the technology is significant. So moving along into the first step of the process and receipt of that technology from the Innovation Observatory. So the topic selection function runs two separate processes, one for cancer drugs that come through the process and then another for the non-cancer drugs. So I'm going to start with the cancer topics that come through from Nerio, and the notification is received by the team approximately 2 to 3 years before that technology is due to receive its marketing authorisation. It's at that point it goes to a decision point 1, which is where the submission is sent to our consultant clinical advisor for elimination, prioritisation and filtering. In the event that a further discussion is needed and the decision-making panel brought in for a wider discussion, we then refer on to a decision point 2 meeting where decision makers will have a bit more of an in-depth discussion on the technology and the decision on where to route it to. Where we agree that we would like to progress with this topic at this point is Nerio will be notified of the decision and the request for the briefing note is made. And as Steve mentioned, that is 17 months for repurposed drugs or 20 months for all new technologies. So the non-cancer process differs slightly in terms of decision making, and there's a few more steps in that decision point 1 process. So again, we're notified approximately 2 to 3 years before expected marketing authorisation. And again, the topic is submitted initially to the clinical advisor for elimination, prioritisation and filtering. On receipt of that decision, we would then pass on to a filtering group for decision making. And then we will submit finally to the centre director and programme director for their decision on the technology. In the event that a decision has not been reached at that decision point 1, as we would with the cancer topics, we would then defer to a decision point 2 for a further discussion around the table and how we can progress going forwards. In the event that we decide to go forwards with the technology, we would then request the evidence briefing from Nerio, again in the 17-20 months process. If at this point it's decided that NICE would not add value, the topic, the company would be informed at that point. So throughout these decision-making steps, we would also be considering if TA or HSC is unsuitable, is there anywhere else that could be potentially where the technology could be routed to instead? So we would look at potentially the Medicines Technology Evaluation Programme, also known as MTEP, and that also sits with the DAP programme as well. We would also consider if it would be better to route into NICE Centre for Guidelines for incorporation into existing guideline development. And we would also route to the medicines prescribing team as well. In the event that we do route the technology elsewhere, the company will be informed at this point, and we will let you know of the outcome. We ensure that all our processes are transparent, and we do publish the topic selection decision on the NICE webpage. You can also contact us at any point throughout the process at topic.selection, at nice.org.uk. So please feel free to contact us at any point. A company can challenge us on receipt of that outcome letter, and there's some key questions that we would encourage to be asked at that point. So always ask us for feedback on that decision and how we've come to that conclusion. You can request to provide further data if companies feel that this would aid the decision-making panel in a further discussion. On receipt of that further data, the information will be shared with the decision-making panel for a further discussion, and at this point, the reconsideration would be final. So once we pass through that topic selection process, we then move into the scoping process and what happens once we've moved further along. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Laurie Farrar now, who's going to discuss what happens in those steps and how the topic progresses through the process.
Thank you, Danny. So hello everybody, I hope you can hear me. So as we've gone through, I can't see that screen, can you show me? I can't see where my mouse is clicking. Oh, here it is. So Neri, I've gone through horizon scanning. Just to recap, Danny's just talked you through topic selection, and now as Danny showed you, I'm now going to speak to you about scoping, and I'm also going to touch very slightly on the appraisal timings at the beginning, just to show you what is the benefit and the point of you providing us with all this information that we're asking for. So I'll talk to you at first about this cancer part here. So as Danny mentioned, as part of the topic selection stage, that what we do is that we seek that early referral from the Department of Health and Social Care, or I'll refer to them as the DHSC from this point forward for any future reference, just to save some of my voice. So basically for cancer scoping, once we receive that referral from the DH, we then do a draft scope development and do a consultation. But what happens is with cancer is that scoping takes part just before the appraisal begins. So those kind of timelines are aligned a lot closer to when the appraisal begins. So it's roughly between 6 and 4 months before the appraisal formal start date. In terms of consultation, they're the same for both processes. That is a 20 working day consultation that happens with stakeholders only. So that will be those organisations listed on the stakeholder list. So you've got your companies, your comparator companies, your relevant patient groups, relevant professional groups, and so on. We don't always hold a scoping workshop. Within scoping, it may be that, say, for example, we've got quite a lot of corporate knowledge in the non-small cell lung cancer disease area, so therefore we wouldn't always hold a scoping workshop for that. So if there's some kind of questions that we feel that would benefit from a workshop, then we would hold that. Or sometimes we do just hold like a short TC with the company to kind of gather more information from them as part of that exercise, and we'll also include clinicians. So it might be that we have like a smaller workshop and not necessarily a bigger workshop, and that's kind of relevant but for both cancer and non-cancer. And in terms of after that scope workshop, we kind of finalise the NICE remit and scope, and as I say, very shortly afterwards the appraisal begins. Now in terms of non-cancer, which is the bottom half of the diagram, we're looking at scoping between 12 and 14 months ahead of the marketing authorisation being received, or you know, the anticipated marketing authorisation date. So you've got here company notified of progression to scoping stage. So that's the kind of like the movement from topic selection into scoping. You'll see here that again you've got that draft scope development, the same with cancer, But what happens with non-cancer is that we go to something called a decision point 3, which is where we kind of look again at that TA and that HST criteria and really bottom out as to where we feel that this topic would be best assessed once it gets through to that next stage. So this decision point 3 has got members of NICE, it's got specific committee chairs from TA and HST involved. It also has representation from the DHSC and also NHS England as the commissioner. The decision making is inclusive, so it's a full across the board decision. It's not just NICE's decision, it's a full decision making panel. So if we decide at this stage, once we look at the draft scope, that we feel that maybe NICE would not add value and it's not suitable for either specifically the TA or the HST programme, then we would notify the company of that and tell them what the next steps are, if any, are being taken by NICE. So that's kind of like that routing table that Danny showed you earlier on in the slide. And if it's decided yes, it's the same thing with cancer, we have that 20-day consultation period, and again the same kind of explorations around the workshop if we feel that we need one, as I discussed with the cancer scoping. So once we've kind of scoped and had a consultation, all of those comments are collated together and put forward through decision point 4. And this is the kind of question of, okay, this is what we've asked. Stakeholders agree that this is an important area for NICE to produce guidance on, and should we actually now move forward with seeking a referral from the DHSC, also known as the Secretary of State, if you want. And these decision makers at decision point 4 are the same decision makers that are involved in decision point 3. So it's got that consistency throughout. So again, members of NICE, committee chairs, DHSC and NHS England. And again, the same options of yes, then it goes forward to start its assessment. So that would be appraisal or evaluation, depending on if you're talking about TA or HST. And no, if no, then the company will be notified. Yeah, so then here again, it's just to show you again that routing table that that Danny showed you earlier. And maybe it's just worthwhile noting at this stage that a topic can at some times change its path over whether it's considered suitable for the TA or the HST programme, and that is throughout topic selection and then the scoping phase, which is also kind of like topic selection, but it's identified as topic selection and scoping just for the classification of what happens during that process. So it can sometimes go out as a TA scope, and then the comments that we receive will change it then for a HST. So it's just worthwhile noting that that can change throughout, and a topic is not final in its routing until we've received that referral from the DHSC. And it's also worthwhile just picking up as well that for a topic to progress as a HST, it must meet all 7 of the criteria that Danny noted earlier on in her slides. So if there is any one criteria of HST that a topic does not meet, then it progresses down the TA route. So now I'm just going to touch on UK PharmaScan or UKPS. So I may refer to this as UKPS throughout, again, just to save my my voice. So this is the kind of the login, well, it's not kind of, this is the login screen for UK PharmaScan. So Nerio use this in terms of their horizon scanning techniques as well, and also NICE use it once a technology has been passed on to NICE, just to keep on top of any changes you've made to your anticipated licensing dates, to enable us to schedule that technology's consideration, whether that be through scoping or through assessment at the right time. So I've added a link here, so that's where you would have to register. And then here, and this is just a test site, so there's no confidential information or actual topics here that may belong to a company. But as you can see here, this is a company login page. So what you'll see here is that you will only ever see what technologies that are in your pipeline that your organisation or a member of your organisation has entered into UKPS. So there's like a very obvious search field here where you can do it by multiple different ways of searching. And then also you can add a new drug I don't know really the difference between a new technology and a new drug. I can't answer that, but there's those two options, and you can also run an access report of kind of like what you've got in your pipeline. There are some coloured stripes along here. Unfortunately, I can't hover over them to show you what they mean because this is a screenshot, but they have various kind of indicators, which kind of like means it's a new record, it's a submitted record, it's currently in quality assurance at NICE, or it's been published, and general rules like that. And then all new entries that you add, so if you add a new drug or new technology, are QA'd by a team at NICE. It's not done by topic selection or the scoping team. It's done in like the guidance digital service digital part of NICE, and they kind of QA the record to make sure that it's got the correct factual information, the accuracy and the consistency, and they also do pay particular focus on any regulatory information that you will submit. So I will go on to that in the next slide, but it's also worthwhile notice that once it's gone through that QA step, the record is then published, and it's then visible to all Horizon Scanning functions or organisations, if you will. So this here is kind of like a record, an example of a record that you've kind of entered into UK PharmaScan. And what I'm just going to show here is the kind of like the importance parts for NICE in particular, and probably Nerio as well. It might be across the board. So if you go, so you've got here, you've got the drug, the manufacturer, and then we're going to go into the indication. And the big important step for us here is this proposed indication, because this helps us when we're communicating with the company that we're talking about the right technology and that we're all on the same page. So this comes particularly important when you've got those drugs with license extensions, and in some cases you can have many different license extensions. And if that proposed indication is right, it's helpful to NICE, and it's helpful in our communications to you and to Nerio as well, to make sure that we are scanning the right technology, because it can get quite confusing. So then further down, what would be down on that screen is talking here about the regulatory information. And the biggest part that we're interested in is this estimated license date. Now, this is really key for helping us doing our scheduling, and as we've said throughout, for that timely guidance to the NHS. So that helps us right from the very beginning with Nerio through to topic selection and scoping, and then when we're scheduling the assessment to begin. I will touch a bit more on that at the end of my slide, but it really is to kind of stress that point. Now, I don't have an actual screenshot of it here, but I believe that at the moment, or what's just been refreshed, is that you used to be able to just put Q2, the quarter and the year, but now it has an extra layer on top, and you can put the month in, and I believe that is now a mandatory field, and again I will describe how key that is as we move further along. So in addition to the estimated license date, the MA date, what's very key as well is this estimated CHMP opinion date, because this goes hand in hand again with our scheduling. So I will kind of like show you later on in the slide set how that really does help us. And again, I don't think the CHMP date is a mandatory field, or whether it's got the months allowed in there, but this is kind of like a plea, I guess, to, if you're filling in this part, please do also fill in this part as well, because it is very, very helpful. So you're here today to listen as to how Nerio and NICE can work together to help you facilitate UK market access. You'll see in my previous slides I've made this big plea for these licensing dates and this proposed indication. So what does it all mean? Why are you providing this to NICE? Why do they want all my confidential data? Well, here it goes. So at the time when you start your EMA centralised procedure, that is 120 days. And what we do now for both cancer and non-cancer, previously for cancer, we've kind of run along these timings since 2016. But because of NICE's commitment in the 2019 VS, we are now moving this way for all cancer and non-cancer technologies. So the key dates that we was asking for in terms of your CHMP date and your marketing authorization date is that what we do is we schedule this first appraisal committee meeting to happen around about the time that you receive your CHMP. So for example, if you're going, CHMPs are always granted at the end of the month. So if you had a CHMP that was due at the end of July, so this month for example, you would then be allocated an August committee meeting slot, because what that would allow us to do is to have final guidance published within 90 days of the final marketing authorization being granted. So you can see here as in terms of our scheduling and the way we can give you faster access for patients, faster market access for yourselves is very key to here. So just showing you in line that obviously, as I mentioned before, we kind of scope around 12 to 14 months ahead of marketing authorization is received. So that's kind of roughly in line around about the same time that you're submitting to the EMA for your CHMP and MA. And then in the middle of that, we will start the assessment. So the company has 60 days to submit their evidence. And then there's 75 days for the ERG, which is the evidence review group step, the clarification stage, and the drafting of the technical report, which is a nice technical report. Following this 75 days, there is a technical engagement step, and what that is essentially a consultation, if you like, but with stakeholders. So that's only with the company and all of those organisations taking part in the appraisals that are listed on the stakeholder list. And in that technical engagement or the technical drafting report, it's got some key questions that will really kind of help the committee be fully informed to make that robust decision making at the appraisal committee meeting. It does not go on the website. It's not a public document. It is only shared with stakeholders. And then comments from that are collated, and NICE then have 30 days to kind of gather, to do all that information gather, and then send out everything to the committee for the committee prepare themselves for that committee meeting. Once that committee meeting has happened, what we're also proposing now is that because we've done all this engagement with the company and the stakeholders very early on, is that we will now only need one committee meeting to allow the committee to make their informed decision making. So then after this this appraisal committee meeting, our hope is that we will produce a final appraisal document, which is kind of like the committee's final recommendations to the NHS on the drug and the disease area, and then that guidance is published. If it comes to the stage where the committee can't make their decision making at that first committee meeting, you want to add around about 60 days, I think, to this process. Maybe about 50 days, 50 to 60 days to this process. So you've done all that, you've been engaged, you've given Nereo the timings, you've been on the ball, you've given topic selection the timings, you've been on the ball with scoping, we've done through all this process, and what is your final outcome? Well, there you go. It doesn't look that glamorous, but that is a nice guidance, a nice final guidance to the NHS. Or that your hopefully that your product should be recommended for use with a mandatory funding mandate within 3 months of positive guidance, and that your technology is available for use in the NHS. So finally, just to touch on just one last thing, is that from April this year, NICE introduced charging for its technology appraisal and highly specialised technologies assessments. So that was any assessment that started from the 1st of April would be charged. So companies are notified of the charge during the topic selection stage. So when you're selected, we say, you've been selected so far, just to let you know if you do fully then progress, you will be charged at the assessment stage. And then the same with scoping. And then just before the assessment formal start date, we will write to you with the notice and asking you for a unique reference number to implement the charge. But more information on that can be found on the NICE website, and there's a link there for you. And that concludes my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Fantastic. So we've got a few extra minutes available for questions. We've received a lot of questions throughout that webinar. Hopefully you can see us a little bit better on the screen now, everyone. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take some of these questions and direct them to the appropriate people around the table. A couple of bits of housekeeping first. The slide deck and this recording of this presentation, I'm going to email you over the next couple of days. That will include a link so that you've got this recording. I will also include every person around the table's email address, and if you have any questions that you felt were a bit too sensitive maybe, or a bit too specific for the webinar to put up on the Q&A, feel free to email us with any of those questions. So we'll start off with, I'll just work down these questions as we received them. So the first question was, if a company goes to NICE OMA, presumably they will be directed to Nerio automatically if appropriate. I don't know if we need to ask anyone that, but
Well, I guess it depends on what stage you are, because some companies do go to the, so for those of you on the webinar that don't know what the OMA, that's the Office for Market Access, that not necessarily everybody that goes to the OMA to begin with have not been through Nerio. Sometimes companies have been to the OMA and they're kind of already in the topic selection process, and we kind of have that, you know, the OMA will come to us and say, are you even looking at this anymore? Because as you can see, as we've said in our slide set, that we're transparent with when a technology has been selected, it's there on the web page, so we kind of have that, you know, as open as we can internally. So it's, so you know, it's, if you hadn't been through Nerio, then yes, you would get directed to Nerio. But if you have, then you wouldn't need to be.
fantastic. So the second question I'm going to direct to our Horizon Scanning analysts that are in the room at the minute, so Sonia and Sarah. How do Nerio scan for biosimilars? I don't know who wants to take that.
So we have a regular systematic approach to horizontal scanning, being biosimilars or any other type of drug. Among those, there are sources specific for biosimilars. So it's either scanning pipelines from companies that they may be developing biosimilars, and also tracking their progress with the company, clinical trials, and also the EMA that publishes information about when the biosimilar is actually licensed. So we have biosimilars in our database. We inform NICE regularly about those. We produce briefings for the first biosimilar that gets to market. We don't do all the subsequent biosimilars for that particular indication. And we have the plan to publish on our website the kind of summary of biosimilars that are currently in development. That will be potentially available for everyone to check within the next few months.
Fantastic. And how does NICE appraise biosimilars?
Well, as Sonia just said, we only really get notified and produce a briefing for the first biosimilar. I don't think we've had one for quite a while, actually. So it just depends on where the originator technology is. So whether that might be within a review, or whether if it's the first, it needs to be a new technology. So it all depends on what happened with the originator.
Fantastic. So the next question is, will NICE appraise type 2 MAA? I'm not aware of what MAA is. Whoever's typed that question,
Is that, I think it refers to a variation of the license. It's a type 2 variation.
Right, okay.
Okay.
So I think we do include that as part of our horizontal scanning.
Yeah.
And we do notify of type 2s. But we need to kind of
yeah, that is something that we're in discussion with at
Yes,
the moment, especially given the commitments made in the 2019 VS. Although the 2019 VS does also state that NICE will consider all new indications and significant license extensions. So I guess I couldn't answer right now whether we would or we wouldn't, because as you have seen throughout the webinar, that each technology goes through its own consideration process, whether that be in the topic selection and then even through to scoping. So it really would depend on the technology. So I don't really think that there is, especially at this stage, one clear-cut answer of either yes or no. It would literally just depend on how it is seen by the decision-making panel at those various stages.
Yeah, and I'm going to skip a couple of questions here to follow that up, because we've had another question which says, I was under the impression that the VPAS 2019 NICE will now assess all products, and how will this impact the Horizon scanning and filtering process?
Well, how it affects you is so have we scanned more or have we scanned and I guess that's just what I said, we will do all new and significant. I think and that's the key word, is that significant. But I guess in terms of Nerio or IO as well, have already started filtering through those additional topics to us now, haven't you? So
Yeah.
I think NICE has only really made that commitment that we will be in a position to appraise or assess those from April 2020. But I think I think off the top of my head, we said it'll be around about an extra 20 topics a year. But obviously in terms of what IO filter through to us, I think we filter around about 350 topics a year, 300 a year, and not all of those progress. I mean, as you all know yourselves, licensing timings can drop out, so it can then move forward by a couple of years, or it can completely drop out. So I think it's quite a hard question to answer, and that is because of the caveat with the pipeline and what you're scanning, that things can change from even one day, 1 hour to the next. So it really just does depend.
Fantastic. So we've also had a couple of questions regarding medtech, and I think we need to be honest in terms of the fact that in terms of our Horizon scanning, we're not sure how that's going to look as yet, but I'll ask them to the panel anyway. So do you expect similar timescales for the evaluation of DigiHealth diagnostics and med devices as you would with repurposed meds? And I'm going to follow up that again with, do you foresee the medicines and timescales for repurposed and medicines being slightly less for medtech in order to get them to NHS quicker?
So we can't really comment too much on the timings for medtech, because medtech is a bit more, so I'm led to believe, a bit more of a different way of going through the regulatory process in terms of how it gets its CE mark. But what I'll probably do a little plug right now for Health Tech Connect, and say, you know, that it's kind of like a UK pharma scan, but not really. It's different, and that is specifically for medtech. So if you are a medtech company, I would certainly encourage you to have a look at that Health Tech Connect and consider if you've got any technologies coming up to put them on there, because it's not just NICE that looks at that. I believe that also the AHSNs and NHS England have access to that, and it goes through some kind of, not a QA step, but like a question step to kind of see where you're at in terms of gaining that CE mark and what data you've got available, and whether you're kind of, okay, you're at that stage now where we can have a conversation, or actually your data's just that little bit immature, come back to us in 6 months to a year. So I would kind of put you with that in that direction.
That filters into another question, discussing the difference between PharmaScan and Health Tech Connect. So we've covered that. I don't know if Leslie wants to discuss about Horizon scanning for medtech and digital and devices.
No, what I would say is that Nerio has been an integral part of the development of Health Tech Connect. We will be feeding data and to the system, and a lot of our Horizon scanning and the development tools, the advanced Horizon scanning tools that we are developing, as I say, will feed directly into that. At the moment, those discussions that's where we are with those discussions in terms of the input from Nerio. We have to have further discussions with NICE and the NICE appraisal process around medical tech devices, diagnostics and digital, as to whether we will provide anything further. But certainly we will be feeding data.
Fantastic. So the next question is, how do products with existing licenses get selected? What time frame is usually followed for them? For example, are they prioritised, and if so, based on what criteria?
Say the first
Sorry,
part
so
again, just to
how
make
do
sure.
products with an existing license get selected? So if a product has a license, how do
Yeah.
they then
An
go through?
extension to that existing one.
So it's an extension to license or something that's had a license but not been through NICE. There's two ways of looking. So maybe I'll
Okay,
answer it
maybe
twofold.
I'll
I'll
follow.
answer it
Yeah, that'd be great,
twofold.
yeah.
Okay, so if a technology already has a license and that's a license, and then it has an extension to that license. So I guess that's where Nereo have classed that as a repurposed technology, and that kind of goes on. That goes on that 17-month time frame in terms that they kind of start tracking it 3 years ahead, circa 3 years ahead, but the notification timings to NICE is 17 months ahead of marketing authorization. So new drugs do take kind of not the priority, but that we're bound by the key performance indicators for new technologies, you know, where we say that we will produce guidance within 90 days of a marketing authorization being received. But that doesn't mean that then we have a license extension and just think, oh right, okay, well, we'll just put it in a year down the schedule. We kind of try to do them all as close as we can to them, because obviously it's an important technology for the NHS and for patients as well. And then in terms of the other part of the question, maybe if it is a technology that has already had its license, but it's maybe already been through topic selection, but it may have been way back when in 2015, for example, and it wasn't selected, but now the company may have a little bit more data, or they may actually be struggling with access to the NHS maybe, then I think the advice at that stage is to come to topic selection myself, or through that topic selection inbox. And essentially that is kind of like that slide that Danny showed, where it's a bit like a challenge, I guess, to the decision, and it's just showing, like, you know, we've got this data now, or we're having troubles, how can you help us, and we can work through that together and then consider the best next steps.
Fantastic. So the next question, at what point and in what format can the company comment on the route selected, for example, TA versus HST? Or can they?
So we kind of we'll let you know at a topic selection stage. So I think that's where Danny showed you. You have that kind of opportunity to challenge the decision once you receive that letter to say that it's progressed. We will generally say whether it's a TA, a HST, or likewise if it's been routed to another work program. So you can challenge at that point, and we do often receive challenges even at the scoping stage. But I guess really at the scoping stage, if you're challenging the decision, which I presume would be either a TA versus HST, which would be the most obvious kind of challenge, what we'll kind of say to you at that point, which is what I did allude to when I talked through to my slides, is that a routing decision can change throughout. So it's best not to get too hung up, if you like, on that routing decision very, very early on, because obviously as we progress a little bit closer to the marketing authorization date, more data becomes more available. We're a little bit more aware of the testing in the NHS, so we have more information. So it can be that a decision changes, and a decision is not final until that referral is received. So, you know, we're quite open to companies coming to us, but generally at the scoping stage we'll say, okay, we've noted your comments, but what we suggest to you at this stage is, if there's a scoping workshop, to raise them at the scoping workshop, and also provide the detail within your consultation response, because that will then get considered and again can change at the decision point 4.
Fantastic. So we've had another question regarding timings, which I'm just going to dismiss, given the fact that Laurie ran through all the timings for the topic selection at the end. The next question, assuming a referral to Secretary of State, within what period do you need to submit the value dossier that supports this TA?
It really does depend on your licensing dates. So I think, as I showed on that third to last slide, was it, you know, the colourful thing, it is really what we're looking at for new indications is the final guidance within 90 days of the MA being received, and allowing us to, and what we do is to allow us to scope in between 12 and 14 months of that marketing authorization or anticipated marketing authorization date, I should say, kind of allows us that play to be able to schedule it. You know, it allows us that if MA is now anticipated later, okay, we've got a little bit more time. If now MA is now anticipated earlier, it allows us to react a bit quicker. But really, that kind of onus of that data relies on the company to provide that to NICE. So you really do need to have that open conversation and not hold that information tight. So that is the aim. If we have the information and we've got an engaged company and we've got that open dialogue, then really in terms of the scheduling, that should be no problem.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's a really valid point, especially in terms of things do change. We know that day to day they can change. And I think one of the key messages is just to keep that communication line open with the company. If you've got more information, provide it. If you've got an update to your timings, provide it. And that can help us and also yourselves to make sure that we schedule in as tightly as possible. So it's just to make sure that if you, or any questions or anything additional that you've got, is to provide it through those channels in terms of which step in the process that you're in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to clump a couple of questions together because I think they've got quite a common theme. So we've had a question regarding the value of participating in the consultation process, and also a couple regarding the format of scoping and appraisal meetings.
Okay.
I don't know if you...
Is that the question?
That's
Sorry.
the question.
So
what happens at the committee meeting, what happens at the scoping workshops, and what's the value of actually participating in those?
Okay, so I'll pick off the first one. So I'll say the value of participating in the consultation. So whether that you be the company, the comparator company, a relevant patient group or a professional group, the value in commenting at the scoping stage is ensuring that NICE get the scope and the remit right. So the getting the scope and the remit right at that stage then means that we can answer the right question in the appraisal, which is basically your guidance to your NHS. So that is the value, is it is providing us with that detail at that stage, helps then the assessment stage because we're asking the right question for your submission. So that was the first bit. What happens at the committee meeting?
So what happens at the committee meeting and the topic and the committee meeting and the workshops?
Okay, so at the workshop, it's kind of like an open forum. There's everybody that's on that stakeholder list. So again, company, comparator company, patient groups, professional groups. Everybody's invited to send 2 representatives from an organisation. Also, we will try and get like a patient, particularly a patient representative and a clinical representative, you know, that is maybe receiving the technology or has the disease area, or a clinician that, you know, treats people with that disease area. And again, so that kind of like is an open round table where we're kind of exploring the detail of the scope and the remit. So what question for the NHS does the appraisal need to answer? So I guess the scoping workshop discussion and the question about what's the value in answering a consultation is that the consultation becomes before the workshop. So all those responses that we've had at the consultation will then explore further at the workshop. So it's basically kind of working through that detail and ensuring that we've got that question right for the appraisal. And then in terms of what happens at the committee meeting, which I think was the third part of the question. So it's quite a big room. I think there's generally, I'll put a figure on it of say 40 people around the table. So that includes all of the committee members. So the committee members are made up of a chair, a vice chair, lay members, statisticians, health economists, nurses, clinicians. They've got GPs on them. So various. I think there's also a company representative, a pharmaceutical company representative, who obviously wouldn't be there if it was their company submission being discussed. You also have the evidence review group. So that's the evidence review group in that colourful slide where I showed that they kind of do that reporting. So they're the independent group that critiques the company submission to kind of make sure that your model works and the kind of health and cost effectiveness that the company is stating is correct. And then we also have clinical experts or representatives. So that's like somebody that's maybe treating patients with that disease. And a patient representative can either be a patient with the disease, a patient that's receiving the treatment that's being discussed, or it could also be a carer, or
relative.
Sometimes we get people from the patient organisations coming if they don't have that patient's voice, if we don't have a patient. And then there's the technical team that work, members from NICE, like the programme director. And basically what we do is we go through the evidence that there's two parts. Well, there's two parts of it. There's the consideration of the cost effectiveness of the technology, and then there's the question of the detail of the clinical effectiveness of the technology. And there'll be key questions that the technical team and the ERG have pulled out from the submissions that we've received, and also the detail and the responses that they will have had with that technical engagement step with the company and other stakeholders.
Okay, so we've got a few more questions. We'll try and rattle through them quickly. Anyone who wants to leave, I know this is now a webinar, so feel free, and this will still be recording. So can you launch your products in the UK without going through a TA process? Well, I don't know who wants to take that. I don't know if Leslie wants to take it.
I guess you can. Every technology that is going through that EMA process, or even through the MHRA as well, we will consider it in topic. It will go through NERIO and then come through topic selection. Now, if NICE selects that topic and feels that we will add value to the NHS and we progress it, and the company wishes not to submit, that's fine. You can take that stance and say, okay, well, we don't want to submit for this. But what will happen is that upon receipt of your marketing authorization, NICE will submit terminated guidance to state that NICE selected this for assessment, whether that be TA or HST, but the company decided did not wish to submit. So therefore it's that kind of indicator that NICE wanted to look at it, but the company did not want to submit, and then that goes on the website. And then in terms of launching, etc., you can do that. It's just that you won't have that funding mandate, which is basically that the NHS must supply that technology for patients in the NHS. So that's your risk factor, I guess.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's the funding mandate is crucial here, and I think that's that should be the important and attractive driver for any new product. As Laurie says, there is a mandate for each NHS organisation to make that product available to patients with that disease area. So I think that sort of sums up the benefit of a NICE recommendation. Yeah.
Fantastic. So is prescribing Outlook publicly available?
Prescribing Outlook publicly available? I don't know. I can't answer you. Send me a question with maybe a bit more detail of what you want, and I can certainly find out the answer for you.
Fantastic. So we've got the inevitable question of how will Brexit affect UK market access? I think the sort of correct answer to that is we need to know what Brexit will look like first.
Yeah, it seems a perfectly good time to end.
No way do we know that. So unfortunately, we can't answer that right now. And the final question, could you just elaborate a bit on the process for challenging a decision not to appraise a medicine? So, for example, if further data is not what is needed, is there anything else to meet the scope with NICE?
Well, I guess it depends on what your challenge is.
Yeah.
I can't really answer that. I guess maybe if you've got a specific question, maybe we need to have a separate chat outside the webinar. So feel free to contact that topic. We've given you the topic selection email address. So send an email through to there and just say it's for the attention of Laurie, the follow-up question of the webinar. But I guess it just really depends on what the challenge is to the process. There could be many different kind of issues that I could touch on. I probably still wouldn't answer your question. I think it just depends on where the challenge is.
Fantastic. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending. As I said, this will be sent out as a recorded link for you all to access and look at our pretty faces again in the future. This will hopefully be a more regular feature. So for market access companies that are in attendance, please do pass this on to any of the companies that you're working with. And again, I'd like to thank the panel.
Can I just say one thing? And I guess if
Sure.
there's anything else that you'd like to know
Yes.
more about NICE or Nereo and the process, and you feel that there's another webinar that you would be interested in joining, then please do get in touch and let us know, because we can only do what we think you would find useful. But if there's something else, then it'd be great if you could let us know.
Fantastic. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.